Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here. Today is the 26th, Monday the 26th of February 2024. Now, what I got here is, this is the M2 money supply. And, went through an unexpected period where the M2 money supply dropped. But now things have changed. The money supply is starting to increase again. And the question is how and why and what's doing this? What's making the money supply go up? Because this is crucial. Banks weren't making loans, and they're still not. And on the Wall Street economy, I think they're starting to make loans again. But on the Main Street economy, they're still being tight, the banks. But I'm going to tell you guys what. The biggest money creation out there of all, the creation of new money, is when banks make loans. They'll loan a person out, say, for instance, maybe $100. Okay, I know they don't loan them $100, but I'm just using that as an example. That $100 in turn to the other banks, then he makes that deposit into his account, then that bank can lend out more. Like they can it's called fractional reserve lending, and it's really, that money is created from nothing. And so that seems to have been picking up, but there's also the fact that what's increasing the money supply right now, and the money supply is starting to increase again, and this is going to impact inflation big time. The reverse repo operation might be having quite a little bit to do with it, as well as the banks starting to make loans in the upper echelons of the financial system again. And of course, now the bank term lending program is going to expire here in March. What? That's this month. Boy, that year went by quick since the Silicon Valley Bank crisis. So, my take on all of this is that they have so many different ways behind the scenes of keeping a disastrous climax to their... And it's always a delayed reaction within the system when they do tightening. Quantitative tightening, paired with raising interest rates, there's always a delayed reaction. Now we've hit the time when that delayed reaction would hit. But in behind the scenes, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz, when the old guy was the wizard was behind the curtain. They're pulling the switches and levers and gears. Now me and you and all of us out here, we don't know what levers and gears they're pulling behind the scenes. The Fed. But they are pulling levers here within the banking system and stuff. So with this situation that we're in right now, the only real outcome that's predictable, because they're able to pull levers behind the scenes, like I say, the only real outcome that's predictable is inflation. Because none of them are going to have the political will to do the right thing and let the malfeasant debt within the system flush itself because of the pain that would cause. None of them are going to take that responsibility. And so they're going to keep pulling these levers and gears, and all of those levers and gears that they're pulling behind the scenes are inflationary. They're all money creation tools. The tool to extract money from the system, we saw it used here when this fall off in the money supply. That was the quantitative tightening. They were really pulling the levers and gears that tighten up the system. But behind the scenes, they know how far they can go with that, and they've already passed the point of how far they can go with it. So now they're pulling the switches and gears that create money. That's the big change, and it came a little while ago with the Fed. And so what we're going to see is, and that's why we're seeing a move more toward inflation again. It's that the disinflation is gone that occurred when this was dropping here. See how this was dropping? That's when we experienced the disinflation. But see, the turnaround point was April 2023. That was the turnaround point. And then the M2 started to go back up again, started to level off and now it's going up. Okay. Moving on, we got to take a look at what's in the news. Now, you know, Bitcoin's founder, Satoshi Nakamoto, they have new emails from him, 120-page detailing the work on Bitcoin and his emails here. And I'm not going to read them all, but I'll read the title of each one. This email was about Satoshi and his Bitcoin scaling assumptions. And it was in 2009, February 5th, 2009. And then the next email was, and I mean, you guys can go and read these emails. The next email was how Bitcoin might scale in the future. He theorized on how the network might have a maximum of 100,000 nodes. Right here. And then his next email was that Bitcoin doesn't waste energy. He expanded on the idea in more detail, how, in a descriptive way, like they've never seen before, of how Bitcoin does not waste energy. And then the next email was on time stamping. And the next email was he talked about digital cash. And in the next email, he was concerned about promoting Bitcoin. And this one about here, well, he was a little bit burned out on it all, I guess. He got a little bit burned out. I guess all that creative energy, you know, expanded its toll. And this one was about Bitcoin, a way to get free money. And email number 8 was about a mysterious Bitcoin donor emerging, of donating about $2,000 to Satoshi for his Bitcoin work. And email number 9 was about Satoshi being a fan of free transactions. And number 10 was he was dedicated to his Bitcoin work. Well, he must have been. But this, you know, even though we have all these emails, does it prove that Satoshi was one guy or a group? Don't know that. Don't know who he was. Still don't know who he was. And, you know, I find it very interesting, all these different Satoshis they've come up with and over time, you know, different fellas that they think was Satoshi. And they've even come out with some of them and said, this was Satoshi, and they'll show his picture. No. Nobody knows who he is. Email number 11 was a web currency for currency trading. A web currency for currency trading. And email number 12 was his first disappearance. And email number 13 was he realized Bitcoin was not anonymous. Number 14 was he gave praise to his protege. Number 15 was he said sayonara. Or in other words, bye-bye. So you can read all these emails. They got them up here on Zero Hedge. Now, billionaire backed Koch, I think it's Koch Network halts Nikki Haley's campaign funding after a South Carolina loss. Well, Donald Trump won, and Nikki Haley lost, and they're halting her campaign funding right now, according to what I hear. Now, Donald Trump at the same time is appealing his $454 million judgment in a New York civil fraud case. From what I hear about this is, is they were charging him, I think it was something like over $80,000 a day extra they were heaping on top. Now they've changed it and they're heaping over $100,000 a day more on top of it. So it's went up. It was 80 something. I think it was 87,000. If I remember right, but don't quote me on that. But I know it was in the 80s a day extra on there, and now it's over 100,000 more every day. So they're upping the ante every day. And they keep creeping it up like that. Heck, soon a million, then 10 million, then 100 million a day. I mean, what are they gonna do? I just get it. I mean, honest to gosh, this is really something. $454 million. How did they come up with that number? But it isn't evened it out, I guess. $454 million. That's almost $500 million. I'm going to tell you guys. I remember years ago, to be a millionaire was really something. Oh, he's a millionaire. Oh, wow. This was like back when I was a kid, be a millionaire was really something. And then later it was really something to have 10 million and then 100 million, And the first billionaires actually started to emerge when I was, I think, a teenage guy. The first billionaires started to come along. They had $1,000 million. Not just 1 million, but 1,000 millions. $1 billion, Now they're talking about the first trillionaires and stuff coming along, and soon it's going to be, they're going to have your first quadrillionaires, if it keeps going this way. It's all got to do with how much you can buy with your dollars, but $454 million is still one heck of a big pile of money. Now, what else is going on? What we got going on is Israeli jets are bombing eastern Lebanon for the first time since the Gaza war began. They bombed Baalbek in eastern Lebanon. Eastern Lebanon. Way up here. That's a long way from Israel, a long way to the north. I mean, that must have... Their jets must have been just about out of fuel by the time they got up there and got back. That's a long way up there into Lebanon, up to Baalbek. Since Lebanese officials say Israel has targeted eastern Lebanon for the first time since the war in Gaza began, at least 2 people were killed on Monday after Israeli military planes carried out 3 airstrikes on the outskirts of Boudeh village near Baalbek, a Hezbollah stronghold in the Bekaa Valley. The attacks targeted a convoy of trucks, with the Israeli military saying it struck Hezbollah terror targets deep inside Lebanon. Confirming the strikes, the Israeli army said its targeted sites used by Hezbollah for its aerial defense system. Meanwhile, in the Red Sea area, the United States is pummeling Houthi sites across Yemen as Red Sea attacks escalate. Well, it seems to me they pummeled them there about 4 or 5 times in a row over the past little while. They've been pummeling them and pummeling them and pummeling them, dropping unimaginable amounts of sophisticated ordnance. And the Houthis just keep coming back. What do you guys think the chances are that this finished them off? I think the chances are about 0. But these ordnance that they're dropping on them, each one of those bombs uses up hundreds and hundreds of ounces of silver. For all the... and that's just the tip of the iceberg compared to the amount. Like, they start dropping those things, and just one of those sophisticated ordnance is worth as much as your whole street that you live on right now. All the houses on your street. What do they all line them all up, about a dozen houses, and what are they all worth? And that's as much as just one of those ordinances, and they'll just drop them. Oh, we dropped 10 more. There goes your money. I'm going to tell you what. Talk about inflationary. War, you have to produce stuff to blow it up. So you got factories producing stuff, which take raw materials. What does that do to the price of the raw materials that they're taking to use to build these ordinances and stuff, and then they just blow them up? What does it do when you take away resources? Anything, I mean, it could be apples. I mean, and if a guy comes in and he says, I'm buying all the apples in the city, what's going to happen to the price of apples? And so this is going to, war is tremendously inflated. And talk about the environment, what it does. It's just basically taking our resources that we have here on this planet and destroying them. Now, taking a look here, after 2 years of resistance, is Ukraine losing the war? This article here. So they're asking a question on City News in Edmonton. It's the first article I've seen that's posed this question, that even dared to pose this question. It says, if Ukraine can't get help from its allies, as it has since the Russian invasion, what happens to its forces? ? And what happens to NATO and other allies if Russia is able to scale up its aggression? 2 years into this war, so much of the world's future still hangs in the balance. But they're posing the question. Is Ukraine losing the war? That's the question they're posing here in this article. Now, we're going to get on and take a look at the silver price today. $22.47 for silver. It's down 45 cents today. So, the precious of the precious. The people's money, silver. And gold. And they always say gold and silver, or silver and gold. They always use the two terms inclusively. This is because all the way through history, the rich man's money was gold, and the poor and the average people out there, their money was silver. This is money. Through history, this has been money. And it's only just in this last little while, when they're so enamored with all their paper and plastic money, that this has ceased to become money just for a little while. It's almost like a testing or an experiment that they're doing on all of us. I seen a guy on YouTube yesterday, and he I don't know where he was getting it, but he was getting these big sheets of paper money that come from the United States Mint, where they make the money, the Federal Reserve, and these were real bills, but they were like the whole sheet, like they hadn't cut them out yet, each individual bill. But they were legal tender, and they were real bills from the United States officialdom, in a whole sheet. And he says, if I walked into a store, he says, they'd be obliged to take this, because it says right on each one of them, it says, for use for all debts, public, and, it's legal tender, in other words. But he said if you walked into a store, they wouldn't take it, because it's all in one sheet. It hasn't been snipped out, each individual bill hasn't. But he says, this is just paper. This is a sheet of paper. And he says, if you could imagine that they can just come along and take a sheet of paper, it's worth almost nothing, just a piece of paper, and as soon as they stamp that ink on it, he said, then it's got value. He says, why has it got value? Why has this piece of paper got value? He says, because They're putting their backing in the full faith and trust of the United States government and their say-so that this has got value. And what that's worth. It's only worth as much as their solvency, basically. But they're in debt up to their eyeballs. And it can never be paid. It's a defunct corporation. But this game just continues on and on until it doesn't. And it's starting to look more and more like to me that when this game stops, the musical chairs stop. And this is the real money here. And they've been keeping it underwater. They've been it's like a beach ball. Some guy's out there and holding it underneath the water. Okay, who's going to win? You got your beach ball, Maybe a soccer ball or something. You got some guy and he kicks that out into the water waist deep and he holds it under. Who's going to win? The guy that's holding it underneath the water? Yeah, he might hold it for 10 minutes. He might hold it for 20 minutes. He might hold it for 30 minutes. But, sooner or later, he's going to have to relinquish that pressure. And the ball's going to come bouncing up again. And that's the way with this. They've been able to do it for a very long time, holding it underwater. When this is the only thing of real value in the world is gold and silver, the precious. But they're essentially using their power, and that power is tied into the military force as well. So there you go. 2247. This is, like I say, this is a bargain of a lifetime. It's only going to happen once in a lifetime. But what else makes the silver such a good value is it's not that much over mining production cost right now. And so when you're buying it takes hundreds of pounds of ore. They have to go through all that process that I've explained before on my show to get it into that ounce of silver. That's energy expended into that, and time, and limited resource as well, because it's limited in the Earth's crust. There's not silver everywhere. Funny thing about it, guys, there's more gold all over the Earth here, there, and everywhere than there is silver. You can quite literally go to Home Depot and buy a bag of sand to mix cement with. And if you've got a pan there, a gold mining pan, you ever heard of panning for gold? And you were to pan that big bag of silver from Home Depot, you might find a few flecks of gold in there. Quite seriously, if you panned it really well. Of course, it wouldn't be worth your while. But, all over the Earth, deposited here, there, and everywhere, is tiny little flecks of gold. And maybe in your yard, maybe under your driveway. If you dug your driveway up and you panned all of that, you might come up with maybe 1/100th of a gram or something. But it's there. My point is it's there. Whereas silver's very limited to very certain places, where they mine it, and they've found the ore, And when that's gone, it's gone. But I'm imagining in my mind that there's probably more. If all the gold on Earth was mined, you'd have a bigger lump than all the silver. Silver's a very limited resource. Well, gold's at 2026 today, and gold's a limited resource too. But I'm thinking there's probably more gold out there than there is silver. So why is the price like 80 to 1? It doesn't make any sense. And this is another reason why I say silver is the buy of a lifetime. And gold's the buy of a lifetime too. The two precious metals that are the cornerstone that supports the entire world's financial system. And then you get all this paper money. That's what you got. So what happens when the paper money goes poof? Well, it reveals, It reminds me of the old furnace I used to have in the shop. I'm going a little bit over time, but stick with me on this. I used to have a furnace in the shop, I still have it, an enormous furnace. It's got a 48-inch long firebox. And if you guys know about wood stoves, that's one big furnace. So one night I had that furnace and I had it all full of wood in there. And I must have had four wheelbarrow fulls of wood inside that furnace. It was a really cold night, and she was just chugging along that furnace. All this soft wood I had in there. Those old 2x4s and stuff like that. The furnace was right full of wood. So I had an old hammerhead there, an old hammer that split the handle. I just threw the whole thing in there with all that wood. Now, you know, all that wood in there, that handle and that hammerhead, there's so much wood in there, it'd get lost in all that wood. You wouldn't even be able to find it. But then, the next morning, it was easy to find it. I just opened up the stove door and all the ashes were there, and there was the hammerhead sitting on top of the ashes. See, all the other stuff burned away. And it left that unburnable away part, which was the hammerhead. That's the way with all this. All this paper currency out there, it's all going to burn away. It's all going to hyperinflate into nothingness. And what's going to be left over is the gold and silver, like the hammerhead, indestructible, and there it is. The only thing of real value that was left. And this menagerie that they've created, it's like they're trying to hide everything with all their paper, all their fugazi going around this way and that way, all their paper contracts, which are all IOUs. They're hiding. What they're doing is they're hiding the real precious thing, which is the gold and the silver. What do you think's going to happen when their system explodes on them? Because it's a Ponzi scheme. What value could this stuff go to? It could go back to silver, could go back to its original value. And what was that value? Well, all the way through history, like during the Roman times, a man would work 12 hours of hard manual labor for 1/10 of 1 ounce of silver. That's what its value was set at. And that didn't change until Powie, they were able to go in and start to mine silver with something other than a pick and shovel. Big industrial machines. And so they mined all the silver out with these big industrial machines, taking massive quantities of, like, millions of ounces a year out of the ground. And just using it up on stuff like electronics and stuff, and it ends up in the landfill. So what do you think's going to happen? Oh my goodness. That's why I say it's a value of a lifetime. And Bitcoin's going up too. Look at this. 53,431 today. Ethereum's 3156. And XRP's at 54.6 cents. So XRP's not going up, but Bitcoin sure is. Wow, it's taking a jump. 53,430. Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 1.82 points, which is basically nothing. It's at 39,133, but it is up. Crude oil is up 78 cents at 77.27. Bonds and rates today. We're looking at rising yields. What's wrong with this chart? The U.S. 10-year is 10 years at 4.29. It's up 3.7 basis points. And the U.S. 30 years at 4.41. It's up 3.4 basis points. And finishing off with the dollar index today is at 103.78. And the dollar is slowly dropping today. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe. Have a great afternoon, guys. And we'll catch you on the next show. Bye-bye.